39,255 men took their life in 2022. That number is up 2.3%. My goal with the ATG After Dark series is to role model for men conversations that are difficult, uncomfortable, polarizing, but need to be talked about because us men need to start speaking. Our opinions matter, our thoughts matter, and we matter. And with that being said, today in the After Dark series, we're going to talk about religion, spirituality, the decline. Maybe this has something to do with the high suicide numbers. Who knows? But we're going to delve into it. I have a good friend of mine from Iron House Strength and Conditioning, a man who was very brave to come on the podcast and was willing to roll his sleeves up to have this conversation. Because like you said before we started recording, no one can have these conversations anymore. So what we're hoping today is have an honest conversation about men's decline in spirituality, Christianity, the whole kit and caboodle we'll throw in there. You know, for me, it's a hard conversation. When I wrote my book, I remember as a kid, I was very angry about what I went through. I was very angry that something that I was told to pray to didn't talk back to me. And I really took it as a chip on my shoulder and was like, well, fine, I'll make you talk to me. And I set out and I kind of spurned it. And this is later on in my life, I was still unfulfilled. I went back to church and I didn't like how people treated me at church. I didn't like how some of it went. And so I kind of went back away. And then I got into psychedelics to help my depression, which I credit with really helping me more than pharma or anything else, kind of just be able to work safely past issues I had. But it was also at the same time, I got massive respect for something on the other side. You know, and I'm a deep spiritual person. My issue comes from the organized side of it. And, but I think that's something when I talk to men today, they don't even know how to express spirituality. It's got to be defined in this box. And we just had a friend of mine on, Joe, you know, he was pagan and he talks about his stuff, and that's completely wildly different than what I came up with in the Catholic Church, you know, because I came up devout Roman Catholic, Irish from Boston, it is what it is, right? So to me, it was very foreign, but the one thing I had was a sense of belief and conviction that that's what he really believed. And that was something that made him whole. And you don't see a lot of whole men anymore. You see a lot of men who just want to run away from everything. And I think it's not that they want to run away. I think it's almost like we're silenced and that we can't talk about anything because, like you said before, what was it you said? You can no longer have a conversation because...
Well, I think in the way our culture kind of pushes men and really everybody in general is this idea of what tolerance means, what differences mean, what love means. You know, we try to define those things. And a lot of times they're defined as, well, you must always agree with everything I say. You must always support me. And if you don't do these things, then you hate me or you don't love me. And it makes it, what it does is it makes it very difficult to share ideas because there becomes this overwhelming fear. I mean, even in like social media today, you know, people get, what's the word when they get silenced or
canceled?
Yeah, canceled. Yeah. You know, our cancel culture is, you know, so everybody kind of lives in this fear of, well, I got to stay in these parameters, or like you said, Jeff, a box. And if I don't, then I'll lose. Like I'll lose relationship, I'll lose community, and so is this kind of fear. And within that fear is the inability to find foundation. And so, you know, you talk about men not really feeling whole. I think a lot of that comes from, you know, a lack of foundation. We just don't know what's what. You know, everything's true or everything's a lie, and we can't talk about it or try to prove it out because of fear of being canceled or, you know, of being labeled as a hateful person or, you know, something like that. And so everybody's just left in this ambiguous state of existence. And, you know, for males, one of our primary drives is a desire for control. We need control. And when we lose control or we feel out of control, a lot of things happen. We get angry or we lash out, you know, just a lot of things happen, but it comes from a way I believe is a way God made males. a desire to be in control of our situation. But you compare that with, the things we just talked about, this, fear and being in a box without foundation. That's totally out of control, So you just feel out of control in your life, and you don't know what to do to get control. And we look here and we look here and we look here, and that's just kind of like our state of existence. And so, you talk about the suicide rate, what is that but like control? I had the opportunity, since you talked to me, Jeff, first, I guess I want to say, you came up to me in the gym and I thought, oh man, what have I done now?
Oh, come on.
You didn't re-rack your weights.
I
put every weight back right exactly where it was supposed to go, And, then you asked me this, and I kind of looked at you like a dummy for a second, because I was like, no, what now? What, Like, you want me to come and talk about religion, which is also a difficult thing because, I love it, though. Against the grain, uncomfortable. Spirituality and faith, they go to like the core of our existence. And so that is the most vulnerable and tender part of us. And I think that's one reason we don't talk about it. They say politics and religion. Don't talk about politics and religion.
You have a whole society can't talk about anything now because of it.
Yes. Yeah. Which kind of stems from those other things we talked about, But it's your very core. So if that's challenged, you're in a very vulnerable state, and it's a very, lack of controlled place. But so you came and you said, I want you to talk about religion. I thought, well, that's a really great opportunity. But then I thought, well, how's that conversation going to go? Hey, come and talk about religion, and we'll tell you why it's terrible.
Let me pull out my lid. No.
We got our baseball bats, and we're gonna, So I went and watched a couple of things. I watched Sin Against the Grain, where you talked to, I think it was Scooby.
Yep.
And you were talking about your book.
Yep.
And I thought, man, that is really awesome. And it's not out yet, correct?
Correct. It comes out in April.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward, based on all the things you said, and maybe you'll talk more about that too. But so many of those things were in line with, talking about being vulnerable, and the way we grow up, and the things we learn, and all of those difficulties. So after I watched that, and I got a little things I didn't know about you, really powerful things. I watched that. I thought, okay, all right, this is, kind of the timbre of it. This is how it's going to be. And we could have a really, healthy conversation here.
Agreed.
So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited, that we can talk about this in this way. It was, again, back to that episode that I watched, man, really interesting, and a lot of segues between, faith and existence, and what people are searching for, what men are searching for, that lead to these kind of like feeling lost in the world or without direction, and then trying to take control. And one of the things you said, you talked about your friend Death sitting on the bench beside you.
Yeah.
And you just said, for me, it was like, I don't want this to go on anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm tired of this, And I think, when you open up, you ask me about like, what did I say about men and direction and stuff? And there it is. I mean, you're sitting on the bench and you're essentially saying, I want control of my life. I want control of my situation. And so many men, thousands of men a year, choose that the way for them to take control, and maybe as a last resort, the only way they know to take control is to take their own life.
Damn, that was well said, actually. Like, really well put together. How many men have you counseled in the last couple years that have come to you in their darkest moments? Been like, JD, man, I'm failing my wife. I'm failing you as a church leader. I'm failing my faith. I'm failing my job. I'm basically a fuck up.
It's been a lot.
I saw your gulp right there.
Yeah, I don't know how to put a number on it, but it's been a lot. And maybe that's some solidarity too, as we talk about men. I don't know, men, I think you guys could probably say yay or nay to this, but we feel like we're alone, or like our problems are either we're the only ones experiencing them, or it's totally up to us to solve them, or we're not men, you know?
I agree. Yeah.
And so, that is one encouraging thing is I have a lot of guys come to me and talk to me about the struggles in their life and things that have messed up and things that aren't going the way that they want them to go. And, and I talk to, I've got guys I talk to and say, here's the struggles I'm having in my life, so there's some solidarity there. You're not alone. We all have, if you're going to live life, you're going to have relationships. And one thing that relationships always have is conflict. You can't have a relationship without conflict. So how you mitigate, how you resolve that, how you handle that conflict is really where like a sense of success and failure comes in life. And, so this, like guys, they come to me and they've got, they're having marriage problems. They're having substance abuse problems. They're having, problems in their job or problems with people. And it's just like all of us, the context changes, like you change the scenario, but the root issues and struggles, they're all the same. So that connects all of us as men and as people. Like what I found, I've been a minister for 21 years.
Wow.
So almost, coming up on 22 years. And, I've been in a lot of stuff. Like, I know we'll talk about, church and faith, but church is made up of people, and that's a misconception about church, I think, is that it is a place where people are perfect or supposed to be perfect, and if you're not perfect, you don't belong there.
I agree with that. I think that's a very common conception.
I think it is a common conception, but such a tragic misconception.
Agreed.
Because people come to church and they say, look, they say they're perfect, but they're all struggling with stuff. They're a bunch of hypocrites, And I'm not coming to this place for hypocrites. But for me, it's always been like walking into a gym and saying, I'm not coming here. There's a bunch of fat people here,
That's very good analogy.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy.
It's like, in a gym, we would say, hey, good job. You guys are working on yourselves. Yeah. You're here. You're in the right place. You come to a church and you're like, you're struggling with that and you're struggling with it. Nah. And then it's just, this is a different kind of perspective. So, one thing about the church is it's filled with people, and people struggle. And people make mistakes. And so it's no different than people anywhere else, But somewhere along the line, we got this misconception about what the church is supposed to be or pretends to be, And that's part of the struggle too. Struggle with men, struggle with the church, struggle with faith, is realizing that we are human beings, and while our struggles are in different contexts, they're really all the same kinds of struggles.
Well said. I have a question. I want you to go a direction wherever you want to take this, but you just brought up a very interesting thing a few minutes ago, and I want to give you a chance I want to humanize you to the men who are listening. Okay, you're still a man. Okay, and you said you have a group of people that you almost like have to do confessional with or talk to or
Yeah.
work through. What are some of the things, if you don't mind us peeking behind the curtain on, what are some of those things that you struggle with? As a person, like you said, like I walk into church, I'm expecting perfection. I'm expecting the leader to be just so clean and so tight and so pristine, like baby Jesus himself kissed you.
Yeah,
you know,
right,
that's what I'm
right.
expecting.
Yes,
And you
yeah.
just said, oh man, I mean, I have my stuff. And then you got into the other stuff because that's what a leader does. You deflect, you address, yes, me, and then you go on and you
Yeah,
cultivate, you
sure.
grow that. But what about you? What is
Okay.
it, some of the stuff you struggle with?
So in my ministry, that is one thing, because of what you just said, you know, especially as leaders, one of our common reaction is to deflect. Part of my philosophy is, you know, how can I ask you to share yourself if I'm not willing to share me? And so I try, like, as a minister, to be a vulnerable person. And, you know, how well that comes off or how successful I am, you know, who can say? But I am. So I've been married for 21 years. And a great marriage. We've got 2 kids, 17 and 15-year-old boys.
You're almost free. I'm there too. I'm
I
happy.
know, right?
I'm getting happy.
Yeah. A funny story about that. My oldest son, a couple of years ago, you know, he was, I don't know what he was doing at the time, but, you know, I was disciplining him and telling him he shouldn't do that. And he looked over at his mom and he said, 2 more years. 2 more years. And I said, 2 more years, you, 2 more years, me. You think you're the one that's going to be free?
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Oh, yeah,
so
no doubt.
one of the things that is a stress for me right now is our children. You know, I put a lot of, you know, I mean, we might talk about this later. I feel a lot of weight as a father, responsibility to be a male leader, especially in a culture where we have so many absentee fathers.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I don't know if it's you, Robo, or you, Jeff, that one of the things that we struggle with, I think it was you, Robo, maybe before we started recording, one of the things that we struggle with as males is like a rite of passage or a transition into manhood, which is not an age. You know, you don't get papers that say, congratulations, you're a man now. But it's a decision on a way of living. So I feel a lot of personal responsibility in teaching my boys, you know, how to live as men and how to treat other people. And when you factor into like my belief system as a Christian, you know, I take what I learn in the Bible and a lot of responsibility to impart that to them and hope that they will take it up and live by it and cherish it and, you know, grow in that direction. So probably number one, like for me, struggle as a man right now is being a good father. So I talk about that a lot with my friends and my circle. Ministry wise, you're right, man. You come in and there's always preconceived notions like, what's a preacher need to look like? How's a preacher need to behave? So I love my church family. I say that. Like, I love my church family, and we're people, you know. These people got this going on. They got that going on. I got this going on. We're people. So, but I love them. But you know, some of them are going to be like, your beard's too long, or you need to shave that beard, or I didn't like you said this, or you need to say that and this, and you need to wear a suit every Sunday, or man, I really like when you wear a collared shirt and, you know, you're not in a suit because then we feel more comfortable.
You need to be doing.
Oh, yeah.
You lose your identity almost.
You know, it's a lot. I'd assume it's any kind of leader in any kind of group of people, you know, you're always going to have opinions because people are people, right?
Right.
And so they're going to have this opinion. They're going to have that opinion. Some of that weight is that it's always on you, you know, even you love these people and they love you. you've got, and part of the struggle is that they're pull in different directions. I'd use little examples like, oh, I love your long beard. No, you need a clean shaved face. You can't have both of those things. Wear a suit every Sunday, or, maybe dress down a little bit. That way if people come in, they feel more comfortable, like you're not in priestly robes, right?
Yeah. My Catholic faith reminds me of that.
Yeah. You can't have both of those things, right? So you're left navigating life, realizing that, somebody's going to be disappointed in you no matter what you choose. And
man, that hits deep. As a man, I resonate that. I think that I always feel like I'm letting someone down for just something I'm having to do for me.
And so maybe some of manhood is learning to, as you decide what it is to be a man and to live this life, you set yourself on a course and you realize that some people are going to be disappointed, but what has changed is you're no longer allowing people to steer the boat. You are the master of your own ship, Mm-hmm. But that's a challenge. So for me, my kids and, just those little stressors of work, personally as a man and a Christian man, I put a lot of emphasis on following what I learn in the Bible. And I can't speak for other people, just for myself, but I think we've all kind of experienced before individuals who appear to be really following, Jesus, the Bible, and then you come and you find out like, they were never, their life is messed up. Number one, they're people too. Like that's one thing you learn, but it leaves this subtle, it implants this seed in every person that, oh, that's really what a Christian is. It's a pretender, Damn,
that's hammer hitting nail on the head right there.
So for me, like living authentic Christianity, like looking at the Bible and saying, okay, this is the way Jesus taught his people to live. And if I'm going to be one of his people, then I've got to do this. It's not never making mistakes, but it's also not compartmentalizing my life and being two different people, like a coat that I put on when I step into a church building around church people, and then I take it off and I live somewhere like someone else, so that's another one of my struggles. It's not in, what the Bible calls sin, like making mistakes, because everybody does that, but not someday you coming to me, Jeff, and saying, you know what, JD, I've noticed that you're not really who you say you are.
That hurts when someone tells you that.
Yeah. And so I don't want to be that person, So those are kind of like my top three, I guess you would, like vulnerable things.
I appreciate you letting us get behind that. I know Robo has something to go, but I want to follow up on an interesting thing you brought up. You brought up about your kids and fatherhood. I've got a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, and a 13-year-old. So for me, it's like, all right, I got a lot out there. And I can tell you something. I think that because over time this country has got where there's a little less religion in it, the kids almost don't even have a clear moral compass anymore. And rather than getting some kind of influence that's good for them, now they're given phones at 8, 9, 10, 11, and they could get on YouTube and TikTok and see some idiot in the middle of a city talking some shit that don't even matter to this kid. And this kid starts going, oh, well, that's the moral compass I need to go by. And I struggle with that, my 13-year-old. My 13-year-old, swear to God, he thinks he's the most baddest gangster cartel member that there is out there. And I'm like, bro, you're weak, you're soft. But I then know what he's like looking at. I then know what he's surrounding himself with. And I do know that I did not raise him in a church. And I do know that my oldest son was. And my oldest son toes a better line than my youngest one.
Yeah.
And I can't help but draw the comparison some that like, damn, that was my mistake. You know what I mean? And I don't know, this is what the point of the series is, right? This is just something I've seen with the kids. And it makes me go, okay, we are now having more kids committing more violent crimes, and there's less repercussions because they don't fear anything. No, I mean, like it or not, my walk with God has been difficult. I will be open that. My book's open about it. I like what you said. You know, I can't be a coat. I have to be in my naked flesh at all times. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I can't help but look back and say, man, when I was a kid, I did have a little bit of fear that I didn't want to go to hell. I didn't want to go somewhere
That's
where
a Catholic in you.
But it was more, and my wife was raised Church of Christ, so she's real devout into that. It, was at the time, and then her church group treated her, just did her wrong, and then she was like, "Boop, deuces out," and that's an unfortunate thing, like you brought about.
Yeah.
But I can't help but think that some of the stuff with today's kids is because they don't fear anything. And there's definitely no punishment that delivers behind it. So it's almost like over time, we allow leaders to de-evolve positions that really actually maybe meant something. With all the scandals that the church faced, with all the different things that happened, these leaders were proven to be false idols.
Yeah.
And because of that, maybe there's a real repercussion that we're seeing now with young generation, because parents like me didn't want to step into church because I knew it was going to be some bullshit Kool-Aid I was drinking. And I'd see you all out Saturday night with me the night before Sunday, and half the people were doing blow at the bar and then jumping up in chairs on Sunday morning, worshiping Jesus as high as they can.
Right,
and
exactly.
I got like, but you were doing blow next to me. I was like, what? You know what I mean? So that's just
We don't
interesting.
talk about that.
Yeah, we don't talk about
Well,
Yeah, but I wanted to bring that up, and we can circle around because I know you got your point.
Well, I have a point off of that one, and that's and it goes into my question. But I think it's not just, hey, these kids are getting exposed to these things. It's a lack of role models at the top within our society
That's
currently.
a good point. Yeah.
So if you look at our athletes, there's some great guys there. There's a lot of terrible ones, and they're the ones getting the airtime. I mean, there's players in the NFL with domestic violence who have shot people, and we're praising these people that are involved in these things. And these are the ones who get front and center in front of kids. If you look at our politicians, and this is where my question's going, they have weaponized religion. And so whether or not they're Christian doesn't matter anymore. It's kind of like the movie Kingdom of Heaven, if you remember that 20-year-old movie where that's the crusade time frame, and there's two characters. I think it's Guy de Lucian and then one other guy, and they go with a Christian caravan of soldiers to attack a Muslim caravan, unarmed women and children. And right before they do it, they say, God wills it. And that's kind of how I feel politicians are now. They're saying, God wills us to do it. And if you're not, a Republican, you're not Christian, if you're not doing this extreme thing, and it's whoa, guys, like the definition of God has been love forever. God is love, right? That's the entire foundation of Christianity, of the New Testament. And so we sit there, we look at these politicians weaponizing and dividing us with religion, and the kids see this. Like we don't have role models missing. We don't have powerful figures in the church who represent that at this point. We're relying on people in Congress somehow to be our Christian role models. I feel like we've lost that, or maybe we never had it.
Hey, you don't like eating protein that gives you machine gun farts, do you, when you walk? Sucks, right? I love ISO Perfect by New Ethics because it only has 5 ingredients in the chocolate, 4 ingredients in the vanilla. And guess what? Those machine gun farts don't exist when I take this product. Guys, there's nothing better than a whey protein isolate for fast digestion. It's got the purest ingredients and quality ingredients inside this product. I've been using it for years. Check it out. If you're currently using a protein supplement, upsets your stomach, gives you gas or anything like that, check this out. Discount code Relentless10. Remember, they sponsored a nobody like me because I had a cool story with bodybuilding and my brittle bone disease. So those are the kind of people behind this brand. An autobiography that can't resist being a self-help book. That is what Brittle to Unbreakable, my journey to redefine suffering, is all about. I can put it into so many words. My friend Stephen Pressfield, he's on the back of the cover for his quote. But at the end of the day, it's really a journey about life, and that, yeah, it's hard for all of us. But you know what? If you kind of dig in, if you're kind of willing to work, if you're willing to just think for a little bit more and just challenge yourself, that's what you're going to find in this book. It is a raw therapy session, is what one of my friends said. And I hope it resonates with you too, because the pages might have pain, but there is power in pain. And I really believe that with my story. So please check it out. Pre-orders going on now to support me as a first-time author. Books will be shipping in April, and they'll be signed to however you want by me. Do you want to know what's going on underneath your hood? Are you wanting to know if you have low T? Have you kind of been going through life as a man lately, just listless and not even knowing? Hell, if you're a woman, if you've been waking up every morning feeling like you're walking through quicksand, these are not normal symptoms. And then you don't have to wear that badge of beating on you anymore. Well, let's take a look underneath the help. My friends at Advanced Vitality, HRT.com, are giving you $25 off a comprehensive lab panel. Now, guys, ladies, this stuff is going to tell you all your hormones, your stress hormones, your thyroid, and not the typical thyroid the doctors say, oh, your thyroid's great. Well, if that's the case, why are there so many overweight people walking around and swear they have a thyroid problem? Because most often you find it out in deeper lab work. And this is kind of stuff that they're going to give you a free consultation on with your lab work. Not everyone needs help with hormones, but they're going to help you decide. And you know what? It's always worth a conversation to have. And their sponsors, I think it would do you good to get a look underneath the hood. Are you looking for more content? Are you looking for a videographer that can shoot you looking as good as I look? Then look no further than Cinema 83, Logan Hyder. He does some great work with our podcast, ATG Syndicate, ATG After Dark. He works with my good friend Joe Adams over at Relentless Pursuit, along with other endeavors he has. Check him out, Cinema 83. He's got all your needs to be able to help grow your brand and content the way you would like to have it. That was one thing I never understood, was the Christians getting behind Trump. I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know if that one really aligned. And that's like something we were talking about while we were in between segments, you know, the politics of it all. And it's like we as a country are losing because we're picking these political divides in religion and so forth in the country. And you can't argue. If you want to argue me, great. I don't believe you. But the country's been going.
Way to be open-minded, Jeff.
I'm open-minded about aliens and lizard people and weird shit and 5G conspiracy, but not about this. But this country has been going backwards for a good 10 years. And it looks like it's hyper accelerating. And it's all because we can't get off of God, guns, and gays. Like, we are stuck on those 3 damn G's. And anytime election comes up, boom. I have a question. Since 2020, have we looked into how elections really go down when you have over 30% of the population believes that there was some fuckery that went on in the election? Yeah, we didn't even give a shit about it. We went right on to trans rights, to something else that pissed people off, that got more people excited. Here we are in 2024. You can still vote without IDs and do all these different things in states. I'm like,
it's almost like smoke screens.
Yeah, and all it does is
don't worry about that. Look at this, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's angry issues. It's issues that get you fired up, that make you vote in a primary, and then politicians realized, all right, if I win the primary, I have a good shot. So let's pick the angriest, most divisive issue. Whether or not I agree with it doesn't matter. I want power, and that's what they're going after.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, Robo, the part of the issue with that is, again, like you look at different contexts, people are still people. Like if some people can use something to exploit other people, they're going to, not everyone will choose to do that, but there are some who always will. Now, take an example like faith that drives to the very core of an individual. That is perhaps the most strong or valuable exploitation that you could use against a person.
I agree.
And so people have always been people, but look how it's reflected itself in history. You talk about the Crusades, and we talk about the Inquisition. We talk about, William Tyndale was a man who was burned at the stake in the 1500s because he translated the Bible into English so the common folk could read it. Wow. And the church burned him at the stake. Why did they do that?
Yeah,
You
it
know?
didn't really set a good precedence for many years ago.
So, but it just comes down, it's like power, right? And why do politicians use religion to help, garner favor? Well, it's power. It's an exploitation about the very core values of a person. And where it gets all messy is that everywhere you have people telling you what God says or what God does without ever reading what God says about himself. Of course, I'm a Christian, so I believe in the Bible and I believe in where it came from. And it is a book that is God telling us about himself and what he wants from us and what he wants for us. And hardly ever does anyone ever look there for what God says about himself. We just Google or watch this person and listen to what people say God wants or what God does or what his will is. It's God's will I do this. I'm like, did you actually look what he said, about himself and what he wants for you to determine that, or did you just feel it, And so we get into all this like ambiguity. It also affects our morality. You're talking about that, Jeff. We have no we struggle with a sense of morality today because we struggle in a kind of like a postmodern society with a sense of absolute truth. There's nothing that's really right or wrong. There's nothing, what we tell ourselves, there's nothing that's really true or false. It just lives in this middle ground. So you give the example of your boys, and you say, well, I feel like my oldest having more of like a moral guidance, a sense of, hey, there's something that is true out there and there's something that is false. And you compare it with like maybe your youngest son or, others. And what do you learn on TikTok and social media? Well, if it's true for you, it's true for you. And if it's true for you, it's true for you. And it doesn't really matter if these two things are diametrically opposed to one another. They can both be true at the same time. That makes no logical sense, but we accept it every day, and we don't talk about it because another condition we set up is, hey, if you say, I don't know about this and this, then now you're hateful or you're intolerant, So we've blocked ourselves from being able to try to like, hey, let me think about this logically and tell me why you feel this way and why you feel that way. It's like, I just do and don't question me, But
a lot of Christians give that answer. Like if you go to challenge and talk, be like, well, why do you believe that way? Or like even get a little bit deeper and stuff. Like, well, my grandpa. And then, okay, well, that's great. Like what really relates to you about following Christ?
Yeah.
Like, just to piggyback on that,
sure.
I've heard Christians at times, these were people I worked with. So I worked for a Christian group. I had a staff of about 40 at the time. This was 13 or 14 years ago. They'd say, the Bible says this. And the question I asked was, where?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Show me.
Yes. Exactly.
But it's more a programming where I think what you're hitting is there's a lack of thinking critically and going to the source. And we see on Jeff's wall, he has tons of books. He reads. He likes and maybe it's the way we're consuming content where it's those 3, 4, 5 minutes. That's all we want to do. We don't want to dive in and really understand the context. And in the book, that's the basis of it all.
Yeah. And I think, exactly what you said, Robo, and it kind of lends to what you were saying, Jeff. Christians, we struggle with this because we've gone for generations of, hey, it's almost like, I'm not speaking to anybody's like, I'm not accusing anyone, but it's almost as if we've gone generations where, hey, you want an easier way to do this? Just listen to me. Instead of look at it yourself, read it yourself, and walk your journey. Don't let someone carry you, walk your journey. And so that's what you run into, like, well, my granddad. Or, why do you believe this? Well, I just do.
I just do.
You know, because literally, you know, most likely that individual has never stopped to consider, ask the question, why do I believe what I believe? You know, that's just what we did. That's just what we do. That's just what was told to me. And so we run into all of these struggles, and it frustrates people too, because, you know, if I've been a Christian for 30 years and I've always just kind of traveled along, I just trusted in what, you know, the man was telling me, and I just trusted in what my family told me, and I never looked to see what God said about it. Then, you know, when I'm challenged, I don't have an answer, and it's frustrating. So, you know, what is the likely response to a situation like that? Well, it just is, you know, or we don't talk about that. You know, it's just, it's more of like a, you know, a showing of frustration and less of like a really, well, I don't know. I need to think about that, or I need to look in that and reason it out myself. It's challenging. And so that happens. And then people are taught another lesson. Well, that's the answer I'm supposed to give. You know, I'm a young person and I say, why do you believe in this? And my parents or whomever, they say, we just do, you know. Well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to say to the next person that asks me, you know.
Why do you think
it perpetuates the cycle?
Why do you think people are afraid to say, I don't know?
You know, from a religious standpoint, I think that is a challenge for people everywhere, not just in faith. Yeah. You know, like if I come up to Jeff and you know, in the gym, or we're having a training session, and I ask him a question about fitness or training, you know, Jeff is going to feel compelled to have every answer because he's the professional, right? And if I were to ask a question that he didn't know, you know, not speaking for Jeff, but somewhere in there's going to be a temptation to not reveal, I don't know that answer, because of, you know, everybody has that. I have it as a preacher, you know, somebody's going to ask me a religious question. Well, to be a good Christian, I better have all the answers, you know? So in faith, like it's the same as in any other place, you know, we feel like to be good, we have to have all the answers. But, you know, one of the things I've been studying at church with our folks is it's okay to say, I don't know, or let's go back and look at that, or let me go back and think on that, or read about it. You know, it's okay to not have all the answers. It doesn't make you dumb. It doesn't make you incapable. It doesn't make you a failure, which are some of the fears we have.
I hope one day doctors hear that message. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that's my conclusion on it based on my experience. You know, we're all tempted to, in order to be right, we need to have all the answers. But life is about a journey of discovery, you know. And I loved, you know, one of the things about just gaining insight in your book and hearing people talk about it is you are showing what every individual experiences on varying levels. It's a journey of discovery. There's a philosopher named John Keats. He said that the world is a veil of soul making. This world, like for me as a Christian, the purpose of this world is to learn a lesson. And the Bible shows us that lesson is to learn about God and a relationship with him. And it's not something that you sit down for 30 minutes and be like, okay, here it is. Here's all the disclaimers, sign the papers. You know, you never stop like exploring this in a journey. And that's the way we all are. Everybody's searching for something. For a Christian, my belief is God made us that way so that we would look for him.
That's an interesting perspective. I've never heard it said that way by a man of faith.
So, but, you know, people, they look to fill that in every other way. Maybe they don't realize it's, you know, or they've rejected what they have seen about God or what's been portrayed about God, you know, because other people said and did things and it turned out to be false or they were exploiting it. And so they say, well, what I'm searching for is not God because that happened. And so we start looking for everywhere. But regardless of like way people are, we're still all on this journey of discovery, right? Mm-hmm. And that's life. And so as a Christian, you know, somebody asks a question and you got to feel like, I know a little bit about this journey of discovery. I know a little bit about this life. So, you know, when somebody asks you a question, you say, I don't know. And then they're like, aha, see, you know better than me. You're like, I never was trying to say that in the first place, you know, but I got to have all the answers if I'm going to be right. And that's a mistake. You know, I mean, look at politicians. They do that, right? And even non-religious, like what politician ever admits that they're wrong?
They all come in with that list of this is my entire plan for what to do, and then they never adjust it the entire 4 years in office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, some fields you're taught that, like, don't apologize, don't admit fault. Because, you know, there might be a lawsuit, you know, there somewhere or something like that. Mm-hmm. Doctors, lawyers, business professionals, when it comes to like negligence and things like that, you know, don't ever admit negligence because that's where lawsuits happen.
There's a great book that I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I can't remember the author,
rambling.
but it's Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me.
Yeah. So we get a patsy, you know, it's like, it was him.
Yeah. Earlier you said that people don't look to the Bible for the conversation that God wants to have with them or something like that. They're just, I guess what you say is they do Bible study time and they sit there with their highlighters and they're apparently reading, but it's not really retaining. It's just they're reading. What did you mean by that? Because I found that to be very profound because you were saying they're not looking inside for, and then you said, hey, it's a journey to actually discover God is why I'm here. Yeah. I never heard that even said by a man of faith. Yeah. And, you know, full disclosure, for about a good 2 years, I took Keegan to church because he wanted to go. And I'll be honest, the first thing that turned me off of it, I started noticing the preachers were doing NLP. And I was like neuro-linguistic programming, and then bringing it down real low and then, come on, say it with me. And all this stuff. It was trying to it was like a Tony Robbins event at the non-denominationals between the rock bands that sounded like Metallica's like Lars Ulrich back there drumming and everything else. And I was like, it didn't feel as meaningful to me sitting there. It didn't feel as anything close to spiritual. Like I would have been more inclined if you had been like, hey, Jeff, I'm going to meet at the park over here. You bring your camping chair and a coffee, and we're going to meet at 8:30, and I'm going to be done by 9. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's going to be something tactical you take about your day. They will be profound that you'll remember for 7 days, and you're going to come back better. I'd be more inclined to show up something like that.
So what I was saying is, so often we listen to what other people say about God than actually reading what God says about himself.
Can you give an example about what God says about himself?
Well, maybe I'll give an example and I might talk a little bit about, you know, another part of that. You know, we say that God is love, you know, and God says that, but then it's true. You even said it, Robo. It's true. Like that is a quote straight out of the Bible, verbatim. God is love, you know, but then people go and they say, well, here's what that means. You know, God is love. God doesn't care what you do. He doesn't care if you follow him or not. That's not true. Like, he wants you to listen to him so badly that he sacrificed like everything he could sacrifice to make it happen, you know? But in our kind of like culture of no absolute truth and you do you and I do me and we all just get along, we've molded God into that picture. Hey, God is love. That means you can do whatever you want to and live however you want to, and God will never ever like say a negative criticism against your way of living, you know, which sounds really good. You know, it sounds really good. Yeah. But you know what you end up with? No moral compass, no direction in life, a lack of control, and feeling like totally aimless in my journey of existence. You know, so that's one example, I guess. And when it comes to looking at what God says about himself, another thing that we do oftentimes is, in my mind, I can kind of think about the Bible as like a puzzle, like not something to puzzle out, like figure out, but it's not like a mystery that you need special help that only certain enlightened people can reveal it to you. More like a 500-piece puzzle. And you lay out all the pieces, and the journey is reading through it, and you discover a piece, and I think what sometimes people do is they discover a piece of the puzzle and they say, oh, look, that's got a heart on it. That's what God is. He's love. And, and you're like, what about the 499 other pieces here? You're gonna, you didn't get your whole picture of what God is and what it means to follow him. You just took one little piece. Or they'll put like a few pieces together and they'll say, look right here, that's God and that's what it means. And I kind of didn't like these pieces, so I'm just going to like leave them over here, and this is going to be the puzzle for me. It's like, well, I mean, you didn't get the full picture here, because you left some of it out, or you just took the part you liked. And so you failed to get all that God was trying to show about himself. And we do that. We do that in human beings with relationships. We do that with God. And I think that brings on, a lot of things that we see. It trickles down through the church and people and behavior. I will share one verse since you're talking about your experience.
Love an example, yeah.
So it's Romans chapter 1 and verse 16, which, and in it, it's his name is Paul, and he's an apostle. He's a follower of Jesus. He saw Jesus and he follows him. He says, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of salvation unto, he says, the Jew first and the Greek also, which is just the way they said to everybody. So one of the things we have in the world today is, look at this great speaker. Look at this awesome man. He's gonna bring us high. He's gonna bring us low. He's gonna throw it in there and impact it. And that may be great. And look at this music, and it may be entertaining. And we may leave feeling good. But where did we put all of our investment? Where did we put all of our power? Where did we put all of our trust? We put it in the value of the band and in the value of the man. But what the Bible says about itself is that the power comes from the message. Like, that's the value. And, even though you even said it yourself, Jeff, when you said, what would be more valuable to me? Like, we just go and just talk about this thing for a little bit. Like, pull out, look at a place here, let it do the talking. Let God say about himself what he wanted to say. And let's look at that together, not me telling you what it means, so that now you need me to be an interpreter. And so that that's another kind of challenge that we have created, but that's not the way the Bible wanted us to be. God wanted us to look to this and say, hey, you guys all come together and gather around this, and it will really change you and it will really enrich you. But people can't help but like latch on to people, and people can't help sometimes to say, hey, there's an opportunity here, you know? And it just creates all these things we see.
You brought up a good point when you talked. It's almost like you're saying, like, the bigger it gets, the harder it is to control the animal. Do you almost think that Christianity's core began as separation because of tribalism becoming so big? Like, meaning churches back in the day, there were pop-up tents, there were all these revivals. I remember the church that my mom and grandma,
back in the day,
like, you could even go back into like the 1960s, 70s, like this, like small settings. I remember the church that my parents went to in Boston was like a small sized one. That thing was packed to the gills with people. And it's almost like now, it wasn't until I moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, and then around the 90s, I started seeing the super churches. I mean, you're talking, there was a church that had hammer strength equipment in it in the mid 90s to work out. It almost rivaled the Powerhouse gym.
Right?
No, all the sinners stayed at the Powerhouse where you could do steroids. But nonetheless, I just remember I was like, all I could think of was what a waste of money. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and to them, it was keeping their kids in and safe. I'm like, but that's opposite what Christianity's message is. It's very much rooted in non-safety. It's very much rooted in risk, and it's very much rooted in giving a good word and a good pat on the back and a hand up, not enclose us in and build up walls and let nobody in. And if you want in, we just until you just stop.
Yeah, so I think a couple of factors have played in that. There's a man named Flavel Yakeley Jr., and he spent most of his life looking at church statistics, and it is unquestionable that the church has been in decline for decades now.
Yes.
And some of the contributing factors to that are some of the things we've already talked about. Number one, like a lack of morality or moral code, a sense of absolute truth or postmodernism. You know, everything in the Bible is, you know, God is true and what he says is right, you know. Well, that's challenging for today's culture, because what if I don't like what God says, you know? Then I want something that I think is right. That was much more appealing to generations in like the greatest generation or baby boomers, the times from the Great Depression and the World Wars. That's when you see churches grow, how they grew the most in the times like right after that, because the world was in danger and people were seeking safety. They were seeking something beyond their power, like, you know, because I don't have any money to feed myself, and our world looks like it's, you know, falling to pot because everybody's at war, and, you know, so, but there was also like an idea of conformity. You know, that's why you had like people who worked in business, they all had to wear the same suits, you know, and this is the way you dressed, and dress codes, and like all these things happen by our culture. Well, that really lends itself to a lifestyle of a moral code, like what the Bible offers, what God offers, a moral code. This is the way I want you to live, quote unquote rules. Right? A rule-driven society. Well, since the 60s and beyond, we, you know, the pendulum has swung the other way. Like, my parents were all about rules. I hate that. I'm not going to be my parents, so I'm going to be all about no rules, you know, and we kind of swung that way. So what happened to churches? Hey, this is a place where you got to come and follow rules. Or I could, you know, not do that. Yeah. Or, you know,
You're really selling it right
yeah,
now.
yeah. And then churches
Yeah.
are like, whew, people don't want to follow rules anymore. We need to keep people here. What can we do besides telling them the gospel or telling them what the Bible says to keep people here? So then started this exploration that in a way got away from the heart of the Bible. You know, some of those things, like, it is dangerous. It's a full commitment, and it might mean like loss. It might mean loss of family. It might mean loss of life. A lot of those individuals in the first century that believed in Jesus, their reward in physical life was, you know, to be put in an arena and killed by lions, or stuck up on poles and burned like torches, or skinned alive, or pulled apart, or stabbed, or, you know, decapitated, or crucified upside down. You know, these are things that happen to them. Like, that doesn't happen, you know, in our country. You know, it does in some other places. So we kind of navigated away from focusing on the word of it, and more like the idea that we could create about it. What really counts is not getting people sold out about what God said about himself. What really counts is just having people here. So what can we do to have people here? Let's put a gym in here. You know, let's have a rockin', you know, rock bands, and anything that we can think of to just to hold on to the people we have and try to get more people. But what we really have created is what I called a cotton candy society. Like, hey, come here. Look, it's beautiful. It tastes delicious, but it has no real nutritional value. And so what people are craving when it comes to faith and religion is spiritual nourishment. And the Bible talks a lot about how God's word is our spiritual nourishment. It's what we need to feed and sustain ourselves. It's our healthy macros, if we're, you know, using the gym talk and fitness talk. But what has happened is, for fear that people will reject that or not hold on to it, or it's too boring, we create this cotton candy, like, hey, come and get all this. It's beautiful. It looks good. It tastes good, but it just disintegrates into nothing in your mouth. It has no real significant value. And after a time, you know what happens when you eat too much cotton candy? You get sick of it. And I think that's kind of one of the things we struggle with. What people really need, they're not getting. And so you're just left unfulfilled. So.
This, it brings up an idea in my head, and I know Jeff and I have talked about this. So I've trained with Jeff for 5 years, and he always, you know, sends me my macros. He wants me to do my weekly check-ins. He wants me to measure all these things. And I tell him, hey, listen, man, I hired you because I want to outsource thinking in the morning. I don't want to think about my workout. I want you to tell me exactly what to do. And sometimes I go all in on macros. Sometimes I don't. And it's almost like people are outsourcing their belief system now and saying, hey, I want someone to tell me what to think.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, and don't get me wrong, like, God designed us for community. So there's this value in community. There's value in input. I mean, look what we're doing right here. Like, guys talking about being men in different aspects. Like, this is community and collaboration, which produces growth. You know, like, we want to grow as human beings. Like, that's so important. But, you know, we're on our own personal journeys, and nobody can walk it but us. And so but like human nature, sometimes we're lazy. You know, why do I do that if I can get someone to do it for me? And so outsource our faith, you know? So, hey, that book is really big. Like, I mean, and some of it is really boring, you know, and some of it doesn't even necessarily doesn't directly apply to me today. It's older, and it's, teaches me about something today, but it's really about these people who lived a long time ago. And so how about this? You just tell me what I need to know from it, which sounds great, but here we are again, at the complaints, right? This person is not who they say they are. They told me one thing and they do another. And now I don't see that here. What they're saying, I don't see it there, and it doesn't match up. And we're left with all this, misinformation and conflict of information and frustration because we tried to do it the easy way, and efficiency is great. And that's an important thing. But sometimes there's no replacing the hard way.
The next question I have is pointed in 2012. In May, I took a bunch of pills. I wanted everything up here to stop. It was what I was doing to myself, the self-dialogue. It wasn't anything more really than that. And woke up, threw up, decided after that I would live a free man. Okay. And free man to me meant spiritually, I would believe what I wanted to believe as long as it made me feel whole. I would make sure that my mind was always expanded every day, and I would make sure I would judge nobody no matter what. And if I did, then I would really think about that, like why that really bothered me and rubbed on me. But in today's world, we're in darker times. And you have 39,255 men who took their life. That number will go up this year. So assuming there's, say, 41,000, what would you say to a man right now who is contemplating killing himself, who is like, it's there. Like they're just like, hey, they're done. There's no God for me. There's no hope for me. There's nothing. What would you say as a person with your faith to try to maybe extend that arm to just give that chance? Because I will say this. I remember after coming to, it was kind of like, the next day I went about my life like nothing happened different. It was very odd to me. And then I started reflecting on over the week, and I realized, if on the off chance that I'm wrong and there's no reincarnation, like I hope I believe, then this is it. And I might as well make the best I can with it. And that point I almost became more peaceful with what was on the other side. My relationship with God wasn't as angry at that point. Mm-hmm. It was like, cool, this didn't work, fine, I'll do what I want to do. And if you don't like it, you'll let me know or whatever, the Supreme Being. But I know talking to other men, because I've gone to a couple coffees, and they're like, yeah, man, the other night I pulled out a pistol and I just, couldn't do it. And I was like, oh, and I sit there and they're like, yeah, I've gone to church, I've gone to counseling, I tried to talk to my dad, my friends, I just want to go.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Well, first I could tell you what I wouldn't say or try not to say. Some kind of profound one-liner that, with a
like
pound
Notebook or something
back,
like that.
and that fixed everything, But seriously, it's because, that situation is full of layers. A person who is at that point, like as you're describing, Jeff, has a plan or has, made a plan or had the gun out, those kinds of things, whatever it is. They didn't just get there that day.
I agree.
So when I would talk to somebody about that, it would first be, I've got to do some learning. I need you to share with me where you're at, and in not so many words, and not so short words, how you got here, because in some ways suicide is a symptom. It's not the real problem, and so what we've got to do is kind of go together to find what the real problem is, sift through the symptoms. And, for me, of course, God is going to play a number one role in that. But you know, when you use your example, like, it's not surprising someone, you know, they might choose end of life as a last resort. Like, I tried counseling, I tried God, I tried family, I tried this, and this, you know. Well, we've got to try to kind of walk back through that and see, you know, how your journey led here, and like I said, figure out what the problem is. When it comes to specifically God and faith, you know, it's going to be a lot of what we've done today. You know, there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and what many people have seen of what it means to believe in God may not be what God told us how to believe in Him. So that changes things. You know, what I thought was what it meant to believe in God or go to God is not actually what He told me about how to do that. And so maybe we try again, you know. So it's a difficult question for me to answer because of, in my mind, there's a lot of variables. Like, definitely I wouldn't say, you know, it's going to be all right, buddy. Or because I don't know that, you know.
No, I love that answer. I love that answer.
I don't know that. I can say I love you. You know, I'll pray for you, which may be true, but I don't think that is ultimately helpful for somebody in that situation, you know, given that circumstance. Like, I will pray for them, but is that going to help, like, bring them back from the edge? Probably not. So we've got to start. I need to know how you got to the brink.
I'm almost looking at like a 12-step program after I went through it.
Yeah.
Like, it was hard for me to work past that, just suicide from a young age, kind of like knowing that, oh, this all ends if I just want to do this. I almost had to work a plan. It's almost like when I've talked to people who've been former addicts that I've coached. They're like, you just have to wake up one day and know that it's going to be another day.
Yeah.
And it's going to be another day.
Right.
And you have to kind of push behind that. And I really actually appreciate, because I think if after that had been done, the couple who was like, hey, man, like, I think you need to go away for a week and just kind of like go talk to someone every day, kind of get just out of the city. If I'm going to pray for you, it's going to be okay, I'd be like, oh, fuck this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It probably would put me back into just the whole, I just don't care. Yeah. And I really appreciate that honesty, because you're a man of faith, and you even said, I don't know if it's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I could pray for you, but I don't know if that's the right answer. Yeah. And that's like a profound thing for people to hear when they hear this being said, I feel.
Right.
The one thing that he did that is important, at least that clicked in my head, is you didn't say, you know, I start saying these things, I start spouting off. It's, let me ask a couple questions and let me shut up and listen. Because I think so much of it comes from not even being heard. No one understands. No one even lets them get that out. And it's just all the stuff bubbles inside.
There's quite a stigma on suicide as well. You know, it's from a Catholic background, you know, that means like
you go right to hell.
You go straight to hell, you know, which I don't draw that same conclusion with what I read in the Bible. And, you know, it's, like I said, it's so many layers. You do have to stop and listen. You know, so what happens then many times is, you know, say a man is contemplating suicide, but he's not going to talk to anybody about it for fear of the shame that might be brought to him. Like, how dare you think about that? How dare you do that to me? How dare you do that to somebody else? Do you know what's going to happen to your eternal soul if you do that? You know, and while some of that may be true, like you're going to hurt your family, you're going to hurt me, like all that's doing is heaping on shame. And shame and guilt don't help drive away thoughts of suicide. Mm-hmm. You know, they just like push you on over there, you know? It's like, well, I thought I was worthless, and it turns out I am. You know? You know? And so you know, those kinds of things, that it wouldn't be helpful, would it? I just needing to listen, like you said, Robo. That's right. So
I know Logan had one, and I want you to have one more, and we'll kind of see where we're at on time if we can get. And then I want you to do something after he goes and him. Ask us a question you want to know from us.
Okay. Ooh,
I know you gotta think on it, buddy. You gotta think on it. Yeah, no, I think this would be cool to see what you would say. Ask us after this.
Okay.
So, I like I said, I have a million different ways I can go. We have limited time, so I'm kind of trying to prioritize what I want to say here. But one is kind of a statement, like what he said earlier, and I'm just curious your thoughts on it. And then another would be kind of a question. The first one was, you were talking about how everything is true or not true, and it really creates like this middle space of like, how do you know? How do you know what's complete bullshit and what's not? Because literally everything's complete bullshit. You know, something that one person completely believes in, another person's like pokes holes in it, and it's like, well, how do I know? And I'm a little bit younger than everybody in the room, and I can tell you that's something. I grew up in a Baptist family on one side and an atheist stepfather on the other side, and this is something I've always struggled with. But also, I think that the way that dynamic is really difficult to navigate, because how do you know? You know, and it does leave you very directionless. And so my statement and comment about that is that Jordan Peterson introduced me to the idea of nihilism. You know, nothing matters. Yeah. What's the point?
Yeah.
You know, and so whether we're talking about men on the edge of suicide or whether we're talking about your kids that don't have, you know, you kind of feel like they don't really have a moral compass, it's like, I think a lot of it comes from that idea that you can't really, there's no conviction about what is right or what is wrong. There is kind of like, oh, just do whatever you feel. Just however you feel like living, just go ahead. So I guess my comment and my curiosity about what you think is kind of like, again, whether it be a teenage boy that just has no direction, or whether it be a man who's so completely lost to the point that like, why does it even matter? Do you think that like that dynamic of not really, of just living in that middle area, do you think that contributes to that, to the lack of a moral compass and kind of like the rise of nihilism, I suppose you would say?
Oh, absolutely. You know, like I everything that I've seen and personally experienced and observed it, you know, that is the byproduct or the consequence of what sounds like a really good state of being. You know, it sounds really good and almost a relief to say, hey, we don't need to talk about these things. Logan, you just believe what you believe, and Jeff, you believe what you believe, and Robo, you believe what you believe, and I'll believe what I'll believe, and, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. That sounds awesome. And it relieves so much pressure. And there are some good things from that. But what are the consequences? The consequences well, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Nothing matters. Mm-hmm. And without direction, there is no control. There's only negative feelings, right. You know? And so instead, what we need to be able to do is reason. We need to be able to reason with one another, not fight each other, but reason. Well, why do you believe that? And I need to think about that with an open mind and consider, you know, your thoughts and your evidences and your conclusions. And I share with you in your open mind about thoughts and evidences and conclusions. And that also answers like, well, what do you do if you're in a state where I got some of my family believe in God, and some of them are atheists, and I'm, you know, left as a young person trying to decide the way that I want to go. Like that journey doesn't happen in 30 minutes, right, you know. Right. JD, sit here and give me a 5-minute answer on how, you know, this is how we got in this situation, right? Hey, I know this is a lot of stuff. Why don't you just tell me, you know, what you know, it starts with beginning that journey. There's going to be mistakes and hiccups, you know. You might equate it to like, you know, a physical fitness journey. I think I remember in that podcast, Jeff, you were talking about, you know, how many, a guy coming to you and being like, I want to be in a show in 6 months. Mm-hmm. And you were like, man, it took me 10 years to get to a place where,
stuff on stage,
yes,
yeah.
you know, it's kind of like that. It's just a lot like that. help me have a strong faith in God. Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
it's gonna take a while. Right. It's gonna be very fruitful and rewarding along the way, but you're not gonna be ready for the show in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
You got one? That way you'd ask us one to wrap this baby up for you.
Oh man.
Pressure.
Right before we started filming, we had a little bit of a conversation. I want to go back to it in the context of specifically, we all make mistakes. We know that we're human. It's part of human nature. Sometimes we get aggressive. Sometimes we shut people down, whatever it is. We're afraid of having those conversations, but even more, we're afraid of apologizing and reopening that door to continue the conversation in a constructive way. And I'm curious your thoughts on how to approach those tough moments where we're kind of bringing our hat in our hand, but we're still trying to, be open and realize those mistakes from the past.
Robo, do you mean like if we were talking about an issue together?
Yeah, and
okay.
Maybe I got heated and attacked you personally rather than discussing the issue.
And I think that's really the key, like you just said. To have healthy conversation, it's important to keep it about the subject and not about the person. There's a logical fallacy called ad hominem, I believe, and it's where in order to prove you are right, you defame or degrade the person. Politics. Like, well, I'm right, Robo, because you're stupid. Yeah. Like that didn't address the issue at all. Like now, so if I'm in a situation where emotions are escalating, I might want to take a pause and just say, hey, what's really causing this? Is it me? Have I said something, in a way that, made you angry? Then maybe I need to apologize for that or be more clear. Is it, a lot of times it's not even, may not even be between you and me, but it may be something that we brought with us along into that conversation, like some past experience, with other people. So I think the real key there in apologizing or giving a defense for your beliefs is to keep it about the subject and not to use accusatory language. Like, you believe this and you people do this. Like I was counseling just a couple of nights ago. There's a young couple. They've been married about 10 years, but they're having some issues, and one of the things I encouraged is try not to use you language, and so it kind of goes along with this subject here. Don't start, making it about each other. Make it about the subject. Yeah. And I think that leads a lot more productive conversation than just degrading into mudslinging or name calling or things like that. Like, that's not profitable. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't get either one of us where we want to go,
Jeff, I think, I'm guessing here, but if someone would have come to you when you were contemplating suicide and said, you're letting everyone down around you, that probably would not have helped you at all.
I already knew I was letting everyone down around me. I already summarized the point that everyone's going to be better off without me. That's why I knew that I was there. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, in these moments, it was a series of unfortunate events and symptoms that got me to that point.
Yeah.
Okay. But I can look at it and say that my lack of a strong spiritual core did help contribute to those symptoms, because I was torn up trying to be something that everyone said I should be. And it felt very conflicted to me, always inside out. I remember sitting in church young age being like, I don't feel like all this is right. I don't feel like all this kind of like makes sense. I kind of believe a lot of this stuff, but I feel like this like big show, these parades, these kneel stand, la la la.
Electric guitar solos are up your alley, though, man. I see most of them all the time.
But I don't know. I feel like it's just changed to a point like it's like everything's all about attention anymore. And, and that leads to loneliness, because if you're always seeking attention, you're never spending time with introspection. and you're never spending time in silence. Like most people can't sit silent with themselves. Most people can't drive in a car without something. Most people can't sit in a room for an hour in silence. But I challenge people that maybe that's what's causing your depression. Maybe that's what's causing your anxiety. Maybe that's what's bothering you. And during those times, those are times to walk spirituality. Those are times to walk like your politics. Like, why do you vote red just because your dad did? You know what I mean? Like, or why do you vote blue because mommy says to? Like, challenge that. I don't know. I agree with you, Robo. If someone said that, I would be like, I mean, I already know all these things. Like, I suck at life. I am not a good Christian. I get it. Kill myself. So, what's the question you have for us? Because I'm curious to see after having this conversation, what do you want to ask us now?
Okay. Well, since I've had all of 10 minutes to think of it and also answering questions, let me just ask this. So of our conversation today, what do you think has been the most helpful or constructive or productive part of it?
You go first.
Time will tell, but I think what you're mentioning, saying, listen, if you have your belief system, whatever it is, the cookie cutter, the cotton candy, I think you said, of faith, it doesn't do anyone good. It doesn't do you good. It doesn't do the person who's trying to help you grow good. It doesn't do the people around you because it has no impact. Whether you believe in God or not, whether you believe in a different God or whatever it is, faith takes work. That's the basis of everything. So if you're going in it with a half approach, you're not going to get any results. It's like anything else in life. You got to dive head first, and really work at it. And that's, I think, what most people don't realize, or what I don't see, is the people who I have, and I call close friends who call themselves Christians. I can count on one hand the people who put work into it and who I see it. The rest are taking that approach. And I think there's, definitely negative connotations in society that come from that approach. If Christianity has to be taken back by the Christians, not the people using it. Yeah.
That's good.
Man, so I think for me, when I first got into bodybuilding, like I was 15, I was 95 pounds. Like I saw the priest a couple of years later. I was like, oh, I could do that. And it's a lot like faith. You never see it until one day it's just there. Until I never saw the bodybuilder until one day I got on stage. I saw the pictures, like, holy shit, I did it. You know what I mean? And I think faith's a lot like that. And that's maybe why I struggle with it, because I can't visualize the conceptual end where like I could in bodybuilding, or I can in business, or I can something else. It's just all, like you said, this vast landscape of change. And that was the one thing I think that stood out to me most. You came on here and you didn't say, no, you need to narrow down and this needs to be the path you walk. You said, no. The journey of God is vast. Your time here is vast with him. The purpose is to learn this lesson. And that really stood out to me. Like that to me is a message that I think most people could relate to. And maybe men, if we're looking to get back into their spiritual faith, whether it be Christianity, non-dom, Muslim, Islam, whatever they're going to do. I think just hearing that simple message you said, like, whoa. Your faith, your spirituality is you. That walk with God is this. You speak from a Christian view, but what you said applies to everybody. It's there if you want to do the work, and this whole life is a journey. And this is just one great intimate segment of us that makes us unique from every other thing in the world that is around us. That's kind of what I took, man. That's great. Yeah, no, we got, how much longer we got?
About 30 minutes or so.
3?
Yeah, I'll be quick. Just kind of sitting back. Obviously, I'm in a different chair a lot of the times. I'm just kind of observing. And you mentioned something about kind of the conversation going much better. And you mentioned something about how you were watching the episodes to kind of get a feel for it, right? And so that kind of brings up my point of the conversation. First of all, I think what he said is great. Like, time will tell. You'll see different. I'm sure you'll get comments about this, right? But we were talking before we started filming about some of the other episodes we've done, before you had even said that, and how it encourages other people to come on, right? And so I would bring up like kind of the hesitation to say that the courage that you then display to have the conversation is what's most important, right? Because that hesitation is probably things that people feel that are much less educated and much less well-spoken than you guys are, so somebody who's confused, they probably feel that same fear and hesitation, maybe to even a different level. And so, like I said before we started, my favorite poem is one that's on my phone and talks about, as you let your own light shine, you let you give people permission to do the same. As you're liberated from your own fear, you liberate others, right? So that's what you guys have done today, and that's why I just think it's a really important conversation, because I think other people will have the same one because of it. So that's kind of my takeaway.
That's good.
Yeah, man. No, I really appreciate you coming on. I know that people are going to see the title of this and be like, oh my God. But it's something that I think people need to have more conversation about. Like, we're actually having a city councilman on to talk like local politics and different stuff like that.
Yeah, nice.
And I think it's those kind of conversations like one we have today that can help men just start talking.
Right.
Right. And that's all we're asking other men to do is just talk. Just have these questions. Sit down with a friend. Hey, where are you at? Like, what do you really believe? And isn't the part of the journey of us men teaching and leading and bringing along and helping? We none of us do it. It's usually just you follow me, and we all assign leaders and followers. And I encourage all men to just drop those labels and just be brothers.
Yeah.
And just see the best ways we can help each other get forward.
Nice.
And tribalism, I think, needs to come back. And I think that this was a great episode to kind of illustrate that. So I know, like you said, you came in here like, oh my God, what it could be.
We got you.
We got you.
Gonna be limping out of here.
Yeah. But I think it brings point. It's something, and I know because the topics evolved that not every person maybe in your church would listen to this. But I think it goes to show and speak what Logan said, your bravery to come on here, because you're actually doing the Christian message. You're putting yourself per se into the arena with potential lions and saying, hey, I believe what I believe, come what may be, I can answer these questions.
Yeah.
And do it okay. And I have mad respect for that. I think a lot of people who watch this can all role model from this and be like, hey, you can have these conversations and not everything has to burn to the ground. Not everything has to end in fire. You don't have to lose friendships.
Right.
You don't have to lose family members. You can have these conversations. You both shake hands and be like, hey, it was a great time. I'm maybe a little bit better for it. You're maybe a little bit better for it. Cool. Until we do it again. And I hope that helps. Where can everyone find you, follow you? Do you do like a blog? Because I would actually probably read yours because you're not NLPing me. You're not giving me hundreds of Bible verses and relating it to things that I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm really terrible about social media.
That's a good thing.
That's a
I'm
good
not
thing.
Anywhere.
You're actually out there living your life.
I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
Our church website has my messages that I speak on a weekly basis. So, those are on there. It's www.lrcoc.org. But that's, they do that. I don't put, they just record me. So I'm just a guy, but I'm really thankful to be here today. And thank you, Jeff, for asking me to be here. I thought after watching some of the episodes, I thought, okay, it'll be fun. It won't be torturous. It'll be fun. 100%. I'm not going to be beaten up out over here or anything. But you're talking about like living the life. There's another verse that says, "Be ready always to give an answer for a reason of the hope that's in you, with meekness, which is controlled strength, and fear, which is respect." And so that was really motivating me today, just to, try to give my best answer with respect. And, so I appreciate you saying that about me, and appreciate being here today.